need to put together a small working group, that might very well be on the cards, and I defer back to Hadia to take us through this session and see what the opportunities might be. So these three elements, in my eyes, compose the comprehensive approach that the at-large has provided with regards to DNS abuse, and I'm very much looking forward to other speakers intervening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And that opens the door for us to now discuss with the RALOs. We would like to know, what's the role of the RALOs and how could they help in DNS abuse, in mitigating DNS abuse? So I will start with our RALO, Sean. I believe Sean is available with us online. Is he?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you, Sean, for being with us today. So how do you see the role of RALO in helping in DNS abuse mitigation?
Well, Sean, again, I think for us at RALO, one thing that is important to note is that our members are actually typical end users who all they need to do is to go online, see what they want. I mean, click something and have that thing produce the expected results that they want, and then they move on. So we, as RALO, I think some of the things that we could do, I mean, some of which we have actually been doing also is the outreach and also the capacity building aspect. I think it's very important to note that we do normally run what we call the webinar series, which some of those topics actually circles around DNS abuse as well. And occasionally also some of our statements. For instance, the statement which we are doing during this ICANN 74 for our session that we'll be holding on Wednesday, also circles around DNS abuse and what our role could be as generally as ICANN board, ICANN community, and of course as RALO. So we think that I personally think that awareness and capacity building is the main thing that we as RALO can do. How do we get these members of ours more aware, more informed in a layman way that actually help them to better solve the internet or better utilize the internet, or I mean, based on some level of layman understanding that they have actually acquired. But at the same time, as has been noted, there is really no platform within ICANN to contribute to anything related to DNS abuse as such. So when we build those capacities or those awareness within RALO, as an example, how do we then feed those feedbacks into an existing system within ICANN? That would also be good if, so that's why I think that what was earlier said in terms of a non-DNS approved group could help in this regard, so that at least there's an opportunity to actually contribute feedbacks from the RALO into those that kind of working group, and of course, hopefully, certain outcomes would emerge from it, which can be globally acceptable to some extent, especially within the ICANN context. So for us at RALO, we continue to do the outreach, and of course, we'll continue to do the capacity building as the case may be. And of course, when the opportunity to contributing to policy-related topics that speaks to DNS abuse, we'll continue to encourage our members to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. We have a comment, so I will give the floor to Yeshim. It's in the Zoom chat. Yeshim, please.
Thanks so much, Hadia. This is Yeshim Salam from ICANN.org. We do have a comment from Naveed bin Reis. He says, how I see that DNS abuse has been accepted by the community as a problem, but we still have no or little consensus among the community about its remit within ICANN. Different parts of communities see different perspective of DNS abuse. An effort is needed to have a consensus on the community-based definition of DNS abuse before we can start mitigating the problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yeshim. So I don't know who would like to comment on this, but my personal view that we don't need to wait until we reach consensus on the topic in order to start mitigating DNS abuse. Let's start tackling the problem. As Naveed said, we all agree that the problem exists, and that's in itself a motivation and a signal for all of us to start, looking how to solve this problem. It is important indeed also from an at-large perspective because it affects internet end users' safety and also their trust in in one of the organizations. I would say that has a great weight in the internet ecosystem, which is ICANN. So I don't know who would like to comment on this.
I'm happy to just briefly chime in. The problem is well noted. We realize that it might not be easy to identify what lies within the scope, but at the same time, it's part of the problem and part of the solution because it's so comprehensive and so broad in its understanding. There is an opportunity for us as the at-large to reach out to the community and try to understand what specific aspects of DNS abuse are. But I would very much look forward to other speakers intervening today, Hadia, where I believe, for example, Graham might have a very specific answer to that question. Thank you.
Hey, all. Thank you. This is Graham Bunton from the DNS Abuse Institute. I do have thoughts on discussions about definitions, and I actually very much agree with Hadia here, which is that we don't need to come to a place of consensus on a full definition of DNS abuse to make progress. In fact, if I'm going to push pretty hard on this, I think it's very easy to spend lots of time talking about the edges of DNS abuse. And it's actually really hard to make progress and do the work on reducing it. And so for this community, especially in a context of talking about collaboration, I would say concentrate on those places of agreement and start doing some work on DNS abuse. So we all generally, no, I don't even think generally, there is pretty universal agreement that malicious registrations used for phishing, malware, and botnets are DNS abuse, and there's work that can be done. And so for this community, I think, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in this session, find some opportunities to make some forward progress on those things and put aside these discussions on the edges of DNS abuse, because I think they get you very little value. Lastly, if you really are going to try and dig into definitions of DNS abuse, I think it's folly to try and create a list of specific harms. We use that very frequently as a shorthand in this community because it's convenient and provides some clarity. But I think if you guys really want to tackle that issue, you need to come at an answer that provides a why these particular harms are best mitigated at the DNS. And I think that's really difficult. So again, maybe put that aside. Let's look at these places of core consensus and make some progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Graham. And I move now to a Piralo. Satish, could you please tell us how you see the role of a Piralo in mitigating DNS abuse?
Thanks, Hadia. Satish for the record. Thanks for the opportunity. And I note that this is not something that we have discussed a lot in the region. So these are my personal opinions on the subject, and I'm not an expert. Now, they say that security is not a destination, but a journey. And today's DNS abuse, the harms may not be the same over a period of time. So we cannot have a kind of fixed definition. And I find it surprising that we have attempted to define this in the bylaws, which means, it makes it very difficult to kind of, what I would say is that, we need a working definition to get started. And then subsequently, as we go forward, GNSO, CCNSO, and the board should refine this depending on what harm is coming up, because this is changing all the time. Now, regarding what RELOs can do, Sean's already mentioned awareness building, capacity building. These are fundamentals, and I completely agree with him. We need to do it. We may be able to go one step further, advocacy, wherein we kind of try to persuade our local organizations, governments to act where they have a role in doing so. And lastly, fourthly, tools, technologies, and institutions. We heard about NetBeacon. Technologies are things like AI. Can we predict your DNS abuse patterns using artificial intelligence? And what are the kind of institutions we have? Of course, the DNS Abuse Institute. So we can continue to work with them as a rail